sick and tired, then you can't.
Welcome back to NTV. Many thanks for staying with us. This is Front and Center, where we dissect the biggest political and governance issues in the Republic. And of course, in President William Ruto's first couple of days in office, we have been focusing on what the Ruto administration is up to as they try to hit the proverbial ground running and form government, do all these things. And even in the before 2 weeks, however, the president has already made his first foreign trip. We shall be getting into that. The president did address the United Nations General Assembly in New York, making his maiden speech as president. Shall be getting into that. It has gotten a lot of rave reviews from Kenyans, especially online. We shall be getting into that. I am joined in studio tonight by political analyst Dennis Ndumbi, lawyer and political analyst Ariba Omoyo Samba. I also have with me lawyer and political analyst Annabel Njoki. Also with me tonight is governance and public policy analyst Sylvester Kasuku. Ladies and gentlemen, many thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's begin where we should, in New York at the United Nations General Assembly, in that address by the President William Ruto yesterday. Let's listen in.
Given the magnitude and variety of challenges the world continues to confront, a more fit-for-purpose United Nations is urgently needed, one that possesses the legitimacy and efficacy in dealing with threats to international peace and security. A just and inclusive world order cannot be spearheaded by a United Nations Security Council that persistently and unjustly fails the inclusivity criterion. Similarly, threats to democracy will not be credibly resolved by an undemocratic and representative Security Council. It is vitally important for this critical institution to reflect the values it is entrusted to protect, to defend, to uphold on behalf of humankind.
Part of the President's speech at the UN General Assembly address yesterday. Let me begin with you, Sylvester. This address has got tongues wagging, especially if you look online. People praising the President for his eloquence, and others said he tackled very germane issues. Others criticizing him, saying he was reading he should have just criticizing his style of reading the teleprompter. Others praising it. All sorts of comments. What are your initial thoughts and reaction to that address by the President?
Definitely taking note that we've just come out of an election, and you know the sensitivity of Kenyans. You definitely not miss them in any of those corners that you have mentioned, whether they are substantive issues or not. Definitely, teleprompters are used by leaders all over the world. Even Biden was using a teleprompter. So, I mean, why would we really bother about a teleprompter? It's just a technological way of being clean when you're delivering a speech. But we need to deal with the substantive issues, and particularly, where was he pitching from? And we've known that there are issues which have been outstanding over a long period of time, and they are global. And since he was on a global stage, Harriet is now the president of Kenya. Mm-hmm. In fact, President Ruto is no longer Kenya Kwanza. He is the president of Kenya. So what he says outside there is taken to be what Kenyans are saying.
Right.
What he does is taken to be what Kenyans are doing. And if he makes any kind of remarks, then it is taken to be, a remark and a position, a policy position of Kenya. So where he came in today, particularly, were issues like regional conflicts, exclusionist nationalism, issues of cybercrime, issues of armed conflicts or regional conflicts, for example, the Horn of Africa, among many other areas. The issue of hunger and dangers of climate change, particularly in diminishing the value of agriculture, returns to agriculture, and stabilization of communities.
Right.
There are the issues of...
Are those what you're calling substantive issues? Or
Substantive issues.
From that perspective.
And there are also issues that deal with governance, particularly at the global level. There have been calls for reforming of the UN Security Council, among many other organs of the UN. Right. And I think this also saw the inclusion of some African states, to be part of the UN Security Council. Right. There are also issues.
So we'll get into some of the issues.
Let me just sieve them. And then now where he came in, particularly with this proposal, was a reimagining of multilateralism, talking about Pan-Africanization of the multilateralism, so that things are seen from the African lens, because Africa is, as he referred to issues of the South. Yes. Africa tends to be one of the most disadvantaged regions. Issues of debt relief. And of course, you can also remember that when Biden spoke, actually his speech equally mirrored the same issues that were covered. All right. Yeah.
Let me get the rest of the panelists' general quick views on that speech. Dennis, if I can come to you, was it a good speech from where you sit?
Absolutely fantastic and fundamental. And even though the president was on a global stage, he was really practicing law, even from a Kenyan perspective. Because when you look at Section 14 of the Treaty Making and Ratification Act, revised to 2018, Article 2.6 specifies that any treaty or convention ratified by Kenya shall form part of the law. And also, if you look at the instruments of diplomacy, what the president did, he mixed diplomacy and strategy. And then, of course, we have the United Nations, the international monetary structure, we have economic aid, collective security, and military deterrence. So he stood on one of our primary modern policy platforms. Right. And he articulated not just the issues that we have in the country. He called technically for quantitative and qualitative multilateral mobilization. And his call was simple. It's an emergency, act now, call to action, and the political goodwill that is needed at a very urgent status. So what the president did, in fact, he came in as the African ambulance, technically, if you like it. And he was sounding the fact that the pandemic came, it exposed critical issues. I think I picked about 12 issues that the president addressed. Many of those issues run across our border. They're regional issues that are critical. Right. I was at the Africa Union a few months ago, and I realized that democracy in the country, in the region basically, in African region, there's a huge deficit. It's receding and declining. And when you look at the issues of food security and many other dynamics, the issue of aid, thereabout, they are critical issues that the continent must address. Right. And if those issues are not addressed, then we sit at a grave danger, is ensuring that this nation that has been called dark for a long time doesn't see the light. But we are at a juncture where Africa is addressing its issues and where Africans are more alive to tools that need to justify their means to an end.
All right. Ariba, before we get into some of the fundamental issues as much as we can, what are your initial thoughts on Ruto's speech yesterday?
When I watched the 8-day-old president of the Republic of Kenya on the global stage, I saw, of course, we had this discussion before, we saw he went straight into trying to position Kenya as a regional hub, and he tried to speak more about the issues which are not only facing Kenya, but also the region. Remember that the president is the diplomat #1 of our country. And then secondly, you cannot ignore the position of Kenya in terms of its influence in terms of the East African community and also the African Union at large. Right. So when you listen to his speech, this is a man who was not only speaking about the challenges which are faced by Kenya, he was also speaking about some of the challenges which are faced by our neighbors, and also trying to position his local policy on the global stage. Remember that the word hustler found itself in his speech. Remember, he quickly went ahead and talked about the bottom-up economic approach, which, of course, President Biden had already spoken about. And for me, overall, is that he knew the assignment. as the diplomat #1 of the country, and he executed the assignment. The only challenge I'm having with my fellow countrymen and women, as my good brother here said, is now we are discussing about whether it was a teleprompter, I don't know how the name you use it, whether it was a teleprompter or what was it, on what he did. And I mean, sometimes we fail in terms of the qualitative analysis of something that has been done. We relegated the entire speech to whether he was reading or whether he had crammed. I mean, that is the conversation that I've seen on the interwebs. And we are looking at it from our political lens. I mean, I wish we can just get over this and know that we have transited from politics to governance. Those who got into government have to play their role. Those who go into the opposition have to play their role. Those who are hanging somewhere, they continue hanging.
And we're here to do that qualitative analysis of that speech for our viewers. And Annabelle, in a nutshell, what was your view of the President's address at the UN?
To pick up from where he's left off, first of all, teleprompter, no teleprompter, doesn't really matter. It's actually a nonsensical conversation. He has taken oath of office. He is now our president, citizens of Kenya, so he speaks for us. What I liked is he's coming from, the first foreign policy we had was, came to birth in 2014. Its pillars are peace, economic and commercial diplomacy, cultural diplomacy, diaspora diplomacy, environmental diplomacy. Now the things that are coming out from what he was addressing, we're seeing SDGs coming out very clearly from no poverty, hunger, education, climate change, and then the most crucial one, which is number 17, partnerships to achieve the goal. So when he's talking about COVID, clearly brought to the fore the fact that we have 2 lanes on this highway where it's like we have an exclusive club for some, is something we're going to have to discuss whether we like it or not, because we're not going to achieve these goals if we're not working hand in hand. The other issues you're touching on, such as food security, if we don't have food security, then our children aren't going to school. We don't have, for us as Kenya, our human resource is our largest, is one of our niche areas as a country. So again, if our people are not healthy, if they're not well fed, then what are we doing? So he not only, and then again, in as far as Agenda 2063, he not only spoke as President of Kenya, but he also clearly expressed the position of the African Union, of which we're a member state. So he's telling the world, you need to listen to Africa. If you're not listening to Africa, then we're going to have a problem, because for us to move forward, Africa has to be part of the conversation, and Africa has to play a part in driving the agenda.
All right. I want us to pay some bills, ladies and gentlemen. Take a quick commercial break here on Front and Center. Very quickly, when we come back, we shall be getting into some of those issues. The President calling on international world lenders to provide what he called pandemic-related debt relief for the worst affected countries, of course, speaking for Africa. We shall be getting into that, and of course, what the very young foreign policy of the President, the new President, seems to be pointing at. Stay with us.
Is the shore for the nywele.
It's hanikwa. The S silent. Hebu tumado kwa hii deal. Himbalas. Imekuwa ikiniembalas. Na unasendaje na niko kwa hii network ingine?
Baby, sina tuma na Airtel money. What is money?
Make payments to any buy goods and pay bill. Deal ni deal. Dial *334# to activate Airtel money.
Hebu tuma za lashes. Unajua mimi na poverty. Tume social distance.
Airtel, the most affordable network.
From a working nation to a vaccination. Ni bad health ita overtax the nation. Pata chanjo COVID assassination. You truthfully jo ili harass the nation. Ukipata chanjo na nilinda pia. Kujilinda ni kujisimamia. Lazima follow up na mabooster pia. Sanitize maagizo zingatia.
Pata chanjo, uwe chonjo. Kanairo, tuko chonjo. Pata chanjo, uwe chonjo. Kanairo, tuko chonjo.
Stubborn dark marks? Stop. Discover the power of vitamin C with the new Garnier Even and Matte Booster Serum, a highly concentrated serum that deeply penetrates, clinically proven to reduce dark marks by 43%. Get even glowing skin from day 6. New Garnier Even and Matte Vitamin C Booster Serum by Garnier. Naturally.
Your generosity imesaidia kuignite a love for reading in our children. Nunua any Cadbury Story Edition packs, scan QR code, na generously share your homegrown story. Cadbury, there's a glass and a half in everyone.
Piga simu bila kikomo kwa saa moja kwa 20 bob tu uendelee kuongea na uwapendao. Piga star 444 star 22 hash au tembelea My Safaricom app leo.
Welcome back to the broadcast. This is Front and Center here on NTV. My panel and I are trying to delve deep into the foreign policy of the new president, William Samoei Arap Ruto, who made his inaugural speech at the UN General Assembly yesterday. We're trying to get into some of the details. In that speech, he talked about building back better from the bottom upwards, essentially including marginalized working majority in the economic mainstream, and also calling on the World Bank, the IMF, and the G20 and other world leaders to offer what he called pandemic-related debt reliefs for the worst-hit countries. Let's listen to that.
I call upon global financial institutions and the international community to take urgent measures and release all existing financial instruments to provide much-needed additional liquidity and secure better fiscal space for developing countries like Kenya to enhance social investment, support climate change adaptation and mitigation, and address security needs and resolve development financing challenges. On behalf of Kenya, therefore, I join other leaders in calling upon the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and other multilateral lenders to extend pandemic-related debt relief to the worst-hit countries, especially those affected by the devastating combination of conflict, climate change, and COVID-19.
Right, Sylvester Kasuku, if I can come to you, what do you think of the fact that the president was trying to position himself as the spokesperson of the African continent and what he called in his speech the global south, in calling for such debt relief for the developing world and such things in his speech?
Definitely. I would like to say that a number of times when leaders are given a chance to speak at the level of, the UNGA, that is the UN General Assembly, and other important meetings, a number of times they do miss points or how to take advantage of the opportunity to bite the pie. If I just give you a point of reference as to why I think his speech was structured in that manner, if you look at some of the proposals that were in Biden's speech, Biden said that they were going to raise about $600 billion for infrastructure to finance development programs around the globe.
Right.
They are raising another $6 billion to support agriculture. They are raising another $2 billion to deal with issues of diseases and to ensure that development of, support facilities like vaccines are developed and are distributed globally, and to support parts of the globe that are in the president's speech referring to as the South. And so straight away, when he was there for delivering the speech, as you can see, he was actually biting straight away into the basket that has been placed at the table, from directly at the UN, platform. So I think it is an issue of reading the mood of the world,
right,
and taking advantage of the fact that there are issues which are shared across the globe, which each of the responsible leaders do find to be very important to be tackled and to be discussed. And the best way to do, which I think is what he was doing, is to actually domesticate that and relate it to your situation. When Biden was talking about the Horn of Africa, as a place that is being faced with the devastation of hunger, he straight away mentioned about 2.3 million people in northern Kenya that are missing food, and that rains have failed for over 3 seasons. So if you are therefore to request for support for Kenya, you would really be at the relevant position. And also if you look at the conflicts that are found in the Horn of Africa and other regions within our environment, you realize that Kenya is usually a loser in terms of, or I don't want to call it a loser in a bad way, but Kenya is actually the place where people run to.
All right.
And at the end of the day, then it means we bear responsibility beyond just our own resident population.
So,
so in my view, from an international platform point of view, he was shaping his policy speech to ride together with the mood of the globe and the issues that are being canvassed at the UN meeting.
All right. At this juncture, Dennis, many Kenyans have been talking about which way Kenya will lean, so to speak, when it comes to the new administration. The Uhuru administration, or the Jubilee administration, was characterized by doing a lot of trade with the East, with the Far East, with China, basically. So we have been described as having faced East in the last 10 years or so. Does the early happenings inside the Ruto administration show you which way we will be facing in terms of Ruto's foreign policy? Or is it too early?
I think His Excellency is interested in the concept of multilateralism and bringing all partners aboard. And I think it's absolutely important. I saw him speak, and really I thought of, this is our new Kwame Nkrumah, who he said is the father of Pan-Africanism. And what His Excellency did, he put through an excellent report card. In fact, you can call it the State of Africa sort of address. And indeed, he said that Africa needs urgent measures to recover, even from the pandemic, and the devastating economic dents and injury that it has received. He said 12 issues, but in conclusion, he put a case essentially on SDG 6, which speaks about Sustainable Development Goal 6 for clean water and sanitation for all. He spoke about SDG 2, which basically states of zero hunger. But essentially, the president said that the high debt to GDP levels, which IMF has considered unsustainable, needs help. You know, other countries are completely not able to sustain it. The huge gaps between spending and revenue, we are seeing that in the country as well at the end of the day. African countries, we are forced to explore alternative financing development models for ourselves. Then the high cost of borrowing in the country, at least you can see what that has happened. And then the other thing that is happening in Kenya and in Africa is the depreciation of our currencies, and it's across the African board. So therefore, Africa, and particularly the AU, needed to make an urgent case to pressure the G20 countries and multilaterals, commercial lenders, to suspend debt repayments until at least 2 years before now, 2 years after now. And that wealthier nations should be encouraged to voluntarily transfer part or all of their special drawing rights to boost foreign exchange thereabout. So essentially, all these obligations that Africa has, without us looking at the aspect of debt, the aspect of financing, fiscal instruments that Africa needs to own and to have and to deliberate and to administrate, then we are not going to be able to meet our developmental goals or any SDG whatsoever. And so the president was putting a strong case, a strong financial case for Africa. And even the very fact that Africa needs to be led to be food sovereign, you know, at the end of the day. So there were, when you read his entire thematics and his entire script, his theme was essentially moving Africa towards food sovereignty and economic sovereignty at the end of the day. And one of the things that he mentioned, which was critical, was he mentioned something about the international community which hit me like a truck. He mentioned that the exclusionism during COVID-19 was a clear glare that the international community looks at Africa with a scorn.
All right.
And that, at least on the floor of Unga, was one of the most awakening realizations that I saw.
All right, thank you. And I will ask you the same question. Does what you have seen so far with the very young Ruto administration, the so-called diplomatic charm offensive that we have seen, of course, when going to the UK, going for that summit with the King Charles III, and of course there was a funeral, then over to Unga, and he has met some leaders here and there, and the speech now at the General Assembly. Does it point to you the direction we are maybe taking as a country in terms of foreign policy, or is still early days?
Ben, I don't think we need to speculate on what direction we're taking with the foreign policy, because before we went to the ballot, Kenya Kwanza gave us their plan.
Yes.
And part of the plan is the foreign policy. So what this regime is looking at is, one, maintaining Kenya's status as an anchor state. This is talking about how, you know, we're a transportation hub, a financial hub in as far as Africa is concerned, a technological hub. So we're looking to retain that. We have been a very good ally and neighbor to our fellow African states and to our global partners. So again, when we're talking about the anchor state element, it's not just regionally, it's also globally. Then we're talking about global citizenship. So in as far as the multilateral institutions or organizations go, we're also looking at maintaining our relations with that, and the various candidatures we've had, we're also looking at capitalizing more to see how many more we can get. And then there's diaspora is going to be a huge conversation in this regime, because we're even talking about having a Ministry of Diaspora Affairs. In the past 2-3 weeks, we've had a lot of conversation about, I don't know what citizen in Saudi Arabia is suffering, they're coming back into the country. For a very long time, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has had to bear the brunt of these issues. What Kenyans do not understand is that usually the Ministry of Foreign Affairs comes at the tail end of the process. Kenyans going to work in Saudi Arabia is a labor element. So there's also the role that the Ministry of Labor plays, and I dare say they have been failing at it, because they're the ones who get to register our agencies, they're the ones who get to vet them, they're the ones who get to audit, to check whether, because they have a training curriculum. Right. Have these Kenyans undergone the proper training they're supposed to before they fly out of the country? So from what I see, this regime has identified that there's a gap, and that is why we're having the Ministry of Diaspora Affairs, so that you have all of it under one roof, and then we can avoid all these problems. On top of that, we're going to be identifying Kenyans as per their skill set, their educational background, so that we're able to better position them for jobs in foreign countries. So we don't need to hazard a guess in terms of what direction we're taking. He's very clear on...
It's in black and white.
Yes, Africa first, and then the rest of the world follows. It's not rocket science.
All right. Ariba, do you agree?
Of course, I fully agree with Annabelle that the speculation of whether we are facing south, we are facing east, or we are facing north, I think it's quite an early conversation to have, because whereas this regime has been viewed to have faced a lot of Far East, that does not mean that it was in exclusion of the West. We still had a number of issues that we were collaborating with countries that are coming from the West. So whereas there's a conversation that there might be some kind of liking towards a particular side, whether Far East, Far South, or West, you cannot entirely place a country and neglect other global allies who are coming from another direction. So I fully agree with that. There is one key thing that came out from his speech, which for me I saw was more like a dangling carrot, the issue of Kenya-UN relations. From his speech, I saw him alluding to the fact that Kenya wants to do more collaboration and support Union with, to be able to upgrade its infrastructure. I mean, this is on a global stage. This is on a United Nations Global Assembly. So what you are essentially telling your local partner, which is like the bridge between you and the others, is that, hey, I am going to ensure that your capacity is built locally so that we can be able to enhance our relations even to your headquarters. Remember that recently we saw the outgoing CS for Interior, Fred Matiang'i, opening a government services unit at Union. where then what they're trying to say is that let us have all government services from the Kenya Revenue Authority, from the National Transport and Safety Authority, from immigration, all those services, instead of those diplomats and those other people who are working at the union coming to the CBD to access or other places to access those services, taking those services to them. And now here the president is saying, see what, guys, if you need more support in terms of land to be able to upscale your infrastructure, then Kenya as a country, we are going to be able to facilitate that. That was a very key point to show that, one, he is looking at how to use the global stage and the UN stature to be able to advance Kenya's interests. He is looking at how then can he fit the challenges that we are having and the solutions that we are fashioning, so that even the local people from the United Nations who are locally can be able to see that Kenya is making a step in trying to solve this. So for me, that was a kind of dangling carrot, which is very key. Then secondly, you could see the kind of foreign policy that is trying to fashion. The issue of climate change, the issue of drought. And as my brother here said, the speech that the president read was not a speech that was delivered in Nairobi, that was prepared in Nairobi. This was a speech that was prepared by the team he had, by them watching in terms of the proceedings that were ongoing. So we have to give it up to them. I mean, they saw an opportunity from the speeches that were being delivered on the floor of the United General Assembly, and the Hussein Mohammed of this world who were accompanying him and Murkomen quickly sat down and crafted a speech that fitted directly onto the opportunities that were available there. Remember, as my brother has said, the US president already said the interventions which are going to come to Africa. And you know what the president did? He already pointed out where those interventions are going to fit in. I mean, he spoke about drought, he spoke about... I mean, it's more like when as a father, as a kid, your father comes home and you hear him on phone saying, you know, ile pesa ya pension imeingia. Then as a kid, you quickly say, by there I don't have shoes. So that then you are able to take advantage of that opportunity. So that was really smart of him.
All right, and before Sylvester, the sound that the comment that we just played from William Ruto, calling on the Bretton Woods institutions, the IMF and World Bank, on the debt issue. Where do you think, how do you think that comes into play or dovetails into Kenya as a country? Because we've seen over the last 1 year or so, Kenya being under like a vice-like grip of the IMF in terms of all these, rules, and of course those things directly affect a lot of what's happening in this country, like the cost of fuel and all those things. The president, in one of his first things in office, he did, end that subsidy, fuel subsidy, and that has affected Kenyans. It will affect the cost of production, the cost of living, and all that. How do you see it all fit into where we are as a country, where we are as a continent, and where the globe is?
Definitely, as already said by my fellow citizen here,
panelist.
He has actually pointed out what I did say, that the president read the mood at the UN. Then he listened to what was being discussed and being canvassed. And actually Biden himself, in his speech, said that they are going to give relief to third world countries, actually developing economies that are struggling, or developing economies that are worse off in using certain parameters that will need to determine their state of the economy. And that this relief is very important because of the current dynamics around the world. The COVID pandemic, you are talking about the rising cost of living occasioned by what is happening in Russia. And actually, Biden, when Biden started his speech, in fact, he spent 9.5 straight minutes discussing the Ukraine issue. And he dwelt on it. He delved into it. And he raised issues of governance, he raised issues of sovereignty, he raised issues of the UN Charter, and he raised issues of multilateralism, what the president was now talking about in his speech. He talked about cooperation, he talked about, partnerships. And he said that using the partnership framework derived from the UN Charter, they are going to make sure that they continue to support, to provide support to Ukraine.
All right.
Until the Russians come to realize that Ukraine is not alone. So having read the mood, that actually there are certain goodies which are already on the table. And the earlier you point at them, as he was saying that, you know, a young one hearing that pension as in Giad. And then he says, you remember, I don't have shoes. So he said, that's when actually I think he brought up the issue that Kenya, he said developing countries. And then he specifically mentioned Kenya, which means if there is a program, therefore, to benefit countries in developing countries, with regard to debt relief and rescheduling of debt, among many other issues, then it means that we expect him to push more for Kenya to benefit. And secondly, it also therefore means that we are reading that the current difficulties around the world, particularly with regard to issues that have been connected to COVID, the war in Ukraine, among many other things. And you also did hear him talking about global logistics being affected. Biden was equally talking about the same, and this has brought a complication. Therefore, which means, therefore, that going forward, we expect to see the government saying there are certain things we can't do, even if we told you we are going to do them, we can't do. The reasons are there. They are for everybody to see. Even at the UN, there were issues. So definitely, if we need debt to be rescheduled, we need debt relief to be done, then you expect
a lot
the
of
government.
Things moving forward.
Yeah, it is actually defining a lot of things going forward.
Yes. Before he stops at there, remember that the issue of debt is something that has been creeping up during the campaigns. And remember that Kenya Kwanza had quite a proposal in terms of, I mean, you remember from the campaigns, the sentiments that were coming out with the issue of debt. So I knew he had to take that opportunity to be able to rally those countries that Kenya has borrowed from to try and get some kind of relief so that he can be able to get a breathing space to advance the plan, the Kenya Kwanza plan. So I think that was very key for him to be able, on the global stage, to be able to clearly say what he's been saying during the campaign.
I want to pay, let me, allow me to pay them. Allow me to pay, yeah, I'll give you some 10 seconds when we come back. And then it's also, allow me to pay some bills, and when we come back, we shall be finalizing on the issue of the budding foreign policy by the new President, William Ruto. And of course, we'll talk about what has been happening in the legislative arm of government, where there have been induction ongoing for the new MPs. And one of the first things on the agenda has been to take care of their allowances. We shall be talking about that when we come back. Stay with us.
Mivita Garden City, a residential development within Garden City offering stunning 1, 2 and 3 bedroom apartments, unique amenities and an urban green convenient living. Call us today on 0722 123 000. Mivita, my home, my life.
New South Ultra Concentrate is my mom's choice. 1, it is 4 times more concentrated. 2, it's ready to use, no need to dilute. 3, it's packed with 4 times more fragrance. And it smells so good. 4, 1 bottle gives you 40 washes. That's 4 times more washes. New South Ultra Concentrate is 4 times more concentrated. For 4 times more washes and for 4 times more fragrance.
And now, final question. Which option provides anti-germ protection for your teeth for 12 hours? A, a helmet. B, a bodyguard. C, Colgate Total.
12 hours?
You can call a friend.
I'd like to call my dentist. Germs are the cause of many dental problems. Colgate Total with zinc and arginine attaches to the teeth like a magnet. Provides 12-hour anti-germ protection. So it is the obvious choice.
The answer is Colgate Total.
Colgate Total, 12-hour anti-germ protection.
Let's get straight to it. Ready for whatever. We gon' ride. Line them up. Let's go toe to toe. Tell them pick a side. Put in work. We don't play no games. Watch him run it high. Savage mode. We gon' keep it G. Yeah, you know.
Dave, this line is not going down, and you're burning up. But I'll sort you out, my friend. See that barrier? Go for it. Yeah.
Bing bang bing.
Mivida Garden City, the latest residential development within Garden City, offering stunning 1, 2 and 3 bedroom apartments and never before seen amenities. The development is part of the already established 47-acre Garden City mixed-use development on Thika Road, providing urban, green, convenient living. Call us today on 0722 123 000 to book a viewing or visit mividahomes.com. Mivida, my home, my life.
From a working nation to a vaccination, ni bad health ita overtax the nation. Pata chanjo COVID assassination, to truthfully jo ili harass the nation. Ukipata chanjo na nilinda pia, kujilinda ni kujisimamia. Lazima follow up na mabooster pia, sanitize maagizo zingatia.
Pata chanjo uwe chonjo, Kanairo tuko chonjo. Pata chanjo uwe chonjo, Kanairo tuko chonjo.
Wagwan go people, my name is Son of Nations, and this Sunday we take it to Jamaica.
Ready or not, so we come here to shine.
And joining us in studio, we'll have Pastor Deno, Shadow Melody, and Sally Paul.
All days of me life, yes, made me untouchable, unbreakable. All days of me life.
So be sure to join us from 11:30 to 1 p.m. only on NTV. And this is Crossover.
Ready or not, so we come here to shine.
Crystal Rivers Residences along Mombasa Road comprises 3-bedroomed apartments, 3-bedroomed and 4-bedroom townhouses. The only mixed-use development close to the Nairobi Expressway. Easy payment plans available. Terms and conditions apply. Call 0757 620 202.
Welcome back to Front and Center here on NTV. Thank you for staying with us. I want us, ladies and gentlemen, to wind up on this issue of Ruto's foreign policy, something that we'll continue to keep an eye on moving forward. Very quickly, Annabelle, what is your crystal ball telling you? From, like you said, from the Kenya Kwanza manifesto, but what is on the ground, some people say, can be different. What is your prediction, quickly?
So far, what is on the ground is not differing from the plan.
Mm-hmm.
2, he is on the right track, especially seeing just before he spoke, the President of the Republic of Slovenia, this is His Excellency Borut Pahor, also spoke to the exclusion and even intimated, based on their track record, that they are ripe to join the Security Council as a country. So it is it's not only Kenya that is feeling some type of way about the exclusion, it is not only Africa. So we're on the right track. Right. Let's give it another 6 months and have a review. All right.
Ariba, 30 seconds.
My 30 seconds is that, of course, with the brilliant chaps at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the brilliant nature of the 5th President of the Republic of Kenya, I think the fashioning of our foreign policy can only get better. And I know for sure that he is set to position Kenya not only as an Africa powerhouse, but also a country that can be well recognized on the global space. So again, as Annabella said, we can only look at 6 months from now.
Okay. Dennis.
I think it's important for us to recognize the place of Africa in terms of its financial contribution and its financial muscle. And it's important for us to understand that from the year 2010, there has been considerable political instability, poverty, corruption, internal disputes, and extremist actors in Africa. Major nations that were contributors to our wealth and our stability collapsed. I mean, the likes of Egypt, Libya, when you look at the instability in Nigeria, when you look at the currency in South Africa that has gone down to a certain measure. One of the things that AU thought back in 2010 is that Africa needs to look at a self-financing model. And they came up with a rationale of 75-25. That 75 will be the self-financing model, and the 25 then will be what they look at externally. And what His Excellency President William Ruto put through is he was essentially giving a scorecard of whether this realization can be done or not. Unfortunately, then the visitation of COVID-19, the pandemic, then exposed the underbelly of Africa And essentially, that's the issue of the fact that we haven't got democracy
All
or governance right at the end of the day.
Your
However,
your 40
I don't
seconds
believe
are
that
over.
the solution to the financial independence of Africa is America. And I don't believe the fact that somebody sat and looked at what Biden said. I don't think America essentially is our salvation. Africa in itself is a rich continent, and we know that for a very long time Africa is not poor. Africa has been abused. And we want to see the rise
Discussion
and the
for
rise
another
of
day.
strong leaders.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, food sovereignty and physical independence is the route map to Africa. The self-financing model is something that must be realized, starting from Kenya at the end of the day.
Kasuku, 40 seconds only.
Yes.
Where do you think Ruto's foreign policy is going in the coming months and years?
Yes, as we see it, having read such a speech at UNGA, therefore also means that he was also communicating to Kenyans, because he was not just addressing the UN General Assembly alone, but actually was also bringing out some of the issues which maybe he has not spoken about in the recent past. That's number one. What therefore remains is for various teams that are now expected to deliver and to translate those into action programs and activities for delivery, must ensure that they are not going to drop the ball. And moving at a global stage to now also look at how the positioning has been done with regard to various international instruments that are being prepared. Like if you look at the EU has dedicated over 330 billion euros under what is called the Global Gateways program, which was unveiled last year. Biden is talking about $660 billion for infrastructure. You are looking at the African Union having what you call the high five priorities, of which we are talking about Integrate Africa, where infrastructure comes in, Feed Africa, and you saw about the stress about ending hunger or managing hunger around the globe, as well as Light Africa, dealing with issues of electricity to power industries and the like. These are issues that are actually enveloped in some of these key policy statements that were being canvassed at UNGA, but now must be made real. If we come back home now, then it therefore means that there must be a serious way of addressing them and to make sure that they are realized. And whether the manifestos contained some of the issues that were being said or not is no longer now the issue. The issue is to deal with matters at the global table, at the national economic table, and that our Kenyans are waiting for.
We shall continue to keep tabs on what is happening with the Ruto administration, with his foreign policy, which is still early days, but of course a lot of activity over the last couple of days, what pundits are calling diplomatic charm offensive. We shall keep an eye on that for you. Let's switch gears before we end up the show tonight and talk about something that has been happening on the legislative arm of government. Both the Senate and the National Assembly have been undergoing induction just before they begin their sittings next week. And one of the first things on the agenda for our legislators has been the issue of their pay. And of course, there has been some kind of soft collision with the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, the speakers of both houses promising their members that they will be taking care of their allowances and they should have nothing to worry about. Let's listen to both the Speaker of the Senate and the National Assembly.
I undertake to robustly and as a matter of urgency engage all the relevant stakeholders, including government agencies concerned, with a view to putting in place a system that ensures honorable senators are sufficiently facilitated in order for you to discharge your oversight responsibilities successfully as spelled out in the Constitution.
We live incrementally. We don't live by reduction. Nobody in their right frame of mind will interfere with your car allowances, with your mileage reimbursements, and with your mortgage and everything else that you have been having, because that is your entitlement. A member of parliament in your constituency, you are a funeral undertaker, you are a midwife, you are an extension officer in farming, you are a vet, you are a counselor on social issues. You literally do everything. And above all, you are also the local ATM. So my leadership will ensure that we facilitate you to discharge some of these unexpected demands from the public.
All right, very quickly, we have less than 5 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. Ariba, let me begin with you.
Let me begin with where Papa Aroma
This
has
thing
left.
of pay seems to be the thing that MPs agree on totally. What is your take on this?
My take on is that we have carried the bad behavior from the, was it the 13th Parliament?
12th.
The 12th Parliament to the 13th Parliament. And it's quite ridiculous that even before the first sitting, the only discussion that we're having about parliamentarians is their pay. And that brings us to the question, what about the electorates? I mean, I have been looking at the salary scale of a member of parliament, which is 426,000 capped, which is the basic pay, 150,000 house allowance. Then remember, there are committee allowances, there are mileage claims and all that. Papa Aroma has clearly stated that an MP, as he is in the village, is all those words that he has used. For me, I feel that this is a failure at the legislature. A failure in that they have not put the structures or the laws which are required to be able to ensure that that local Mwananchi in the village, when he or she has a problem, they don't have to call their member of parliament, or they don't have to call their MPs. So it's a failure on the legislature part of it, not having come up with robust laws to be able to ensure that the social, economic well-being of the electorates is taken care of. But I feel this is a slap in the face of the electorates who voted them into office, that in the first order of business, the first discussion that members of parliament and senators are having is about the pay. I think the bad manners has been carried forward. We might not have carried forward anything else, but the bad manners definitely has been carried forward. And I don't know for how long this is going to continue. Right. But Kenyans, see your leaders. The first thing they do, they talk about their pay.
Annabelle, what is your take on that argument that the MP, when they go to the village, the constituency, they are the ATM, they are the everything, so they have, which is not part of their mandate anyway?
They are all those things, but they are all those things because they allow themselves to be all those things. Like you said, it's not part of their mandate. All they have to do is say no. There are very many other channels for them to get the job done for their electorate. Like he said, they have not put statutory measures in place. Secondly, they have options because they operate at national government. They have options to lobby via the various national government institutions to get the work done for their electorate. So you don't need to give anybody money. What they're giving us here are simply excuses that are preposterous, unacceptable, and like he said, are slapping Kenyans' faces. And in addition to that, part of the induction was supposed to be the SRC chairperson, Madam Mengich, coming to speak to them about these proposals. And apparently when the acting clerk of the National Assembly got to that part of the agenda, they heckled her. So I'm asking, immaturity much? Where is the place of dialogue? Are you not supposed to have a conversation so that you come to some sort of consensus between members of parliament and the SRC? They need to do better.
All right. Kasuku, the SRC proposed to slash the allowances. The MPs are insisting on keeping them. What are your thoughts, very quickly, on this past week?
As a policy person, I would like to say that I'm very disappointed with the functionaries of government that are meant to put in place policies that address the people. The issue that we are seeing in the MPs, looking like when they arrive in the village, their pockets must be emptied, they must take care of funerals, they must take care of hospital bills, means that there is a failure in policy. We must create policy frameworks that take care of the needs of Wananchi. For example, the medical issues, they need to be dealt with. If we don't deal with it, then no single MP, irrespective of how much you give them, will ever satisfy the needs of the people. If it comes to issues of, so it therefore comes to what we call, it is system versus individuality and non-conventional methods. So we need to create systems that care for the people. And in that way, we will see MPs also stopping to maybe demand some of the things they're demanding for. Because currently there's a gap. How do you bridge the gap? And I can assure you,
right,
if you go home, even you now, you are being seen on TV. When you go home, they say, I've seen Kitili, let me go and ask him something. It's not that it's the MPs alone who are the ones being asked.
So I should get some allowance for that.
So even you. So what I'm saying is that the MPs, you know, sometimes we can blame them, but we need to look deeper into society. What is causing the restlessness in the people? Because there's an element of deprivation, there's an element of a gap, there's an element of non-attendance to the issues that affect wananchi.
All right.
So we need those issues addressed through policy and through structured systems that are able to cater for them. But at the end of the day, the way things are moving around, the conversations they are having, means that maybe if there is a court ruling somewhere, or if there is a kind of a precedent that has already been set by law, then that precedent must now be put aside or set aside because there are interests to be catered for.
We'll wait and see. All right.
So those are issues that therefore need to be looked at.
Dennis, have the final say on this.
Yeah, Ben, we need to remind parliamentarians that Bunge is not a shopping mall. And this is the parliament that we want to see them sort of detach themselves from the mannerisms of the 12th parliament. Is that this is the parliament that has to look at Kenya from an austerity perspective. This is the parliament that has to establish economic policies that check on the public sector debt. And they have to curtail government spending. Essentially what the 12th parliament did, they hoarded themselves intense salaries. They became extravagant. Themselves and the executive were on shopping spree, bungee jumping everywhere. It was almost like a brothel. At this, at that. Then at the end of the day, they sit in parliament and they're like, so who is going to pay all this hedonism and extravagance? And they're like, the poor mwananchi must pay for this. And essentially, let the Wabunges be reminded that every bunch of salary you add yourself to, each of those allowances that you're talking, the payer is a poor mwananchi. So how do you look at it? When you say that when you come to my village, I have to ask you for 20 shillings, I'm asking you to look at it differently. Look at how do we enhance production? How do we alleviate poverty at the end of the day?
Right.
How do we make sure that every home is economically independent and there's gross domestic happiness? There's nowhere in our constitution where we imagined that our economic liberation comes from the salary of Mbunge. We are also liberating you economically. That is why you ask for a job, you know, at the end of the day. So what we are saying is that this parliament must adjust its thinking. And His Excellency William Ruto is looking at this country as not a country of consumers. And the Wabunges have started eating too early. We want them to produce, not to consume. We don't want greedy members of parliament. We want members of parliament that think that there has to be fruit in this country. And therefore, if they eat seed too early, we are going to go hungry at the end of the day. And one day we may just eat them.
All right. On that bombshell, let's leave it there. Ladies and gentlemen, many thanks for joining us on the show tonight. Dennis Ndumbi, political analyst, lawyer, political analyst Ariba Omoyo Samba, lawyer, political analyst Annabel Joki, and of course, public policy analyst Sylvester Kasuku. Thank you so much for finding time for us tonight to help us, help Kenyans to make sense of what's happening in this country. Many thanks for staying with us on behalf of the entire team here on Front and Center. We appreciate the privilege of your time tonight. Be sure to join us every Thursday night from around 9:30 here on Front and Center as we try and delve deep into the issues bedeviling Kenyans, the biggest political and governance issues in the Republic. I am Ben Kitili. Good night from Nairobi.